You're my tip.
Our guest today is a man who knows both discipline and inspiration. He's left a few stones unturned on his journey. As an aviator, he has circumnavigated his beloved Canada from Pacific to Atlantic. As a serious touring singer-songwriter, he has played every whistle stop from coast to coast for the better part of 50 years, and he's still going strong. As a painter, he's captured images of this country that makes his soul vibrate and, dare I say, sing. He has 11 Juno Awards, is a member of the Country Music Hall of Fame. He received the Governor General's Award for the Performing Arts in 2018. He is a member of the Order of Canada and possibly descended from the bloodline of Jesus Christ himself. Thank you, and hallelujah to you, sister. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear friend and the incredibly talented Canadian multifaceted artist, Mr. Murray McLaughlin. Through all these years of the music business, though it may have been from time to time on the back burner while he was chasing down the whole music thing, art really was kind of another form of solace for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and it is. The common thread that runs through everything that I like to do, whether it's writing, music, and songs, whether it's martial arts, whether it's flying or whether it's painting, that they're all existential experiences. Reality for me is a process of trying to still the chatter that's always going on in your head. And so, like, anything that shuts that up just for a minute is immensely refreshing. So something that focuses you, that makes you sit right down in the minute that you're in, is immensely satisfying to me. So that's the core of painting, is it makes you be in the moment you're in and pay attention.
I like the fact that you put all of the creative processes, all of the creative forms into this basket, because I believe that. Creativity is creativity. You think your painting is far less fettered by the pressures of business than music, because music always, no matter how much you try to get away from it, it's always kind of insidious the way it can sneak into you.
Well, that may have been true once, but it no longer is. And this is, again, a short version of a much longer story, but maybe it started when I was living in Italy in 2013, but I kind of really had a good long look at stuff. And I realized that all other concerns, other than the simple fact that you make music because you love to make music, are bullshit. I don't think about the music business at all. If anything, I think like I exist in the music business like a tick on the back end of a hound. It has nothing to do with me, and I got nothing to do with it. I mean, I love making music. I love the buzz of communicating with people and finding out that something that I've created actually works. I love the energy I get back from people in a concert when I sense that that's happening. And the big trial is when you're doing new stuff that isn't something that they've heard before. You know, that give and take is, it's all I need. And fortunately, I call this thing that I'm in the dark music business, because it isn't really the music. Isn't Drake? It's not Drake. It's not Spotify. It's not Taylor Swift. It's like this neat thing that you get to do. You go out and you play concerts, and people show up, and you get to play music for them, and something happens. Maybe people leave and they're a little different than they were when they walked in, and you certainly are.
It's the only real thing left in many respects.
Yeah.
Radio's become so narrow. I remember about 10 years ago or so, somebody asked Gordon Lightfoot if he was going to do an album, and he said, "What for? Nobody will play it." It's interesting, now at 80, he's starting a new album.
He's had the same revelation because he almost croaked.
Yeah.
And, I've had that same experience in the last 20 years myself, of looking that little puppy right in the eye. And it does kind of change the way you look at things. Mm-hmm. When I put out the album Human Rights a few years ago, there were some songs on it that were written in a way that I'd never really tried before. I literally sat down in what I call the rubber room, like being in an isolation tank, where all you can hear is the blood rushing through your body. And when you're that isolated and devoid of stimulus, your brain really lights up to entertain you. And if you start poking around in your head with a sharp stick, really interesting stuff comes out. So I would just write whatever came in to my head, and then kind of work in any direction that it seemed to want to go. And I didn't put any restrictions or rules on it. And half the time I didn't figure out what I was writing about until after it was done. But if I may, I would like to give you a particular little piece of poetry that became a song. Is that okay?
No, I'm sorry, you can't do that.
This is what came out. If I sit too long, my feet will grow into the ground. Then I'll be earthbound, like an old and dreaming tree that's dreaming of the sea while someone cuts it down. Gotta rise up like a bird and sing my song, but it can't take too long. Or you might fall asleep, my love, drift away from me. Then where would I be? So. It was a love song.
There are so many things, there's so many forms of love that song expresses. This education that you found yourself in, I mean, you used to always take the mickey out of me with, "Oh yeah, there's old Thomas again, the guy with too many chords in his damn songs."
Ian Thomas, if a song could have 4 chords, then you'll use 12, yeah.
I have my own form of satisfying my ADD. So that Human Rights album was a really interesting departure for you, in that it was a total free-form creative experience that, in the territory we were talking about just a little earlier, it wasn't about forcing anything. It was about letting everything in. Now you start educating yourself into a chordal lexicon of some of the great pop standards. This is something you haven't investigated yet, but you start getting interested in it, and it starts drawing on, obviously, more harmonically sophisticated chord structures, kind of indigenous to the big band days, etc. The classic sort of Sinatra-era version of the pop song. Mm-hmm. You did give me an interesting delineation the other day. Some people called them jazz songs, and you were having an interesting discussion with Sam Feldman when you were talking about a song you were doing.
Well, yeah, I was at a dinner, Diana Krall and her sister and Sam Feldman, who's her manager, and a couple of other people. And I happened to mention to Sam that I was working on this project, that I had been studying the great writers of the American Songbook, Sammy Cahn, Harold Arlen, Cole Porter, et cetera, et cetera. And I was kind of I was really interested in trying to create songs that worked for the same reason that those songs, which appear superficially simple, but really go deep, 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 why they work. And Sam said, everybody's trying to write a jazz song. Assuming, I guess, that he thought I was going to try and pitch him something for Diana, which I was not inclined to do. So I looked at him very levelly and I said, there's no such fucking thing as a jazz song. Okay? There are jazz compositions. Blue Rondo a la Turk is a jazz composition, or Take the A Train is a jazz composition, but jazz is basically doing, extemporaneous solos and variations on an existing melodic structure. So what you're telling me then is like Tisket a Tasket is the greatest jazz song ever written? Ella Fitzgerald sure did a job with that. So anyway, it shut him up, which is rare.
So in this territory, though, somehow here you are writing these traditional songs. So last summer, we're up at Peter's Players.
Oh, yeah.
Mark Jordan was performing up there and asked Murray if we'd come up, Murray and myself, if we'd come up and do a couple of songs as well as surprise guests. And so we did, and Mark was playing with a pretty sophisticated group of musicians. Dave Restivo was on piano. This guy is a jazz pianist extraordinaire. On bass, Mark Rogers, just an unbelievably profound bass player.
Yeah, he's good.
Great drummer, and Mark Lalama on the other keyboard, filling in a lot of kind of orchestral things, sometimes with accordion, sometimes with synth patches that simulate string things. And Murray hauls out this song from his latest album. So I hope you understand the respect I have for a guy. I'm looking at Murray, who's probably writing some of the best stuff he's ever written in his life now. And I'm ashamed to say I'm ready to get back to work. I've had a little bit of a holiday, and I'm inspired to get back to work because this bugger inspires me. I wonder if we could close this show with one of your favorite songs, whatever it is,
Sure,
from this new album called Love Can't Tell Time. That's the new album. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the great Murray McLaughlin.
So is it okay to tell a little bit about where this came from?
No, I'm sorry, you've had far too much time. Sure, please.
I had a really dear friend, a lady named Allison Gordon, a really accomplished woman, and a curmudgeon. Allison was a president of Penn. She was a novelist, broadcast journalist, and television. She'd done all kinds of stuff. One day we were sitting in the back of Alan's restaurant in the patio with a bunch of people, and Allison enjoyed a beverage, and she'd enjoyed several. So she decided that she would take me to task for how easy it was to be a songwriter. She looked at me, she said, "Songwriting? How hard can it be? Moon, June, frickin' spoon." So I cleverly rejoined, "Oh yeah?" Anyway, the gauntlet was laid down, and we had a bit of a bet that, okay, come on, let's see how easy it is. Come on, let's try and write some stuff together. And the result was 3 of the nicest songs that I've ever had the privilege to work on. Now, the backstory is Allison, at a fairly senior part of her 60s, had very happily found herself a scarlet woman. She was the other woman in a love triangle, and she was just tickled pink. To be a scandal at 68 was her wildest dream. So in honor of this, she had a tattoo placed on an intimate part of her anatomy. It was a heart with a banner through it. And on the banner it said, "Your name here." So this idea that we had, how wonderful it is that love in all its power and all its glory can strike at any time in life. It can happen When you're 80, it can happen just as easily when you're 80 as when you're 18. Oftentimes with as much depth and as much power, so watch out for mom and dad in that Chartwell residence. But this is what we came up with. People in their prime can hit the sack and still be active. Get it out of your system. Contrary to most thinking, man, they often are attractive. Maybe not to callow boys or shallow little girls who've yet to learn it's time and wear puts luster on the pearl. Love can come anytime at 17 or 99, while your heart's still beating and the sun keeps shining. Love just can't tell time. Look at that moon smiling while it shines. Ain't changed much since you were 29, and you're still just a sucker for that same old line. Love just can't tell time. Love's a risky business. You're old enough to know it. Not many ways to make it work, and a lot of ways to blow it. You think the book on love is closed, chapter, verse, and letter. Then love comes sneaking up on you. You'd have thought that you'd know better. Love's a risky business. You're old enough to know it. Not many ways to make it work, and a lot of ways to blow it. You think the book on love is closed, chapter, verse, and letter. Then love comes sneaking up on you. You'd have thought that you'd know better. But just look at that moon. Sure looks fine, just like it did in days of old lang syne. And you're still just a sucker for that same old line. Love just can't tell time. Love just can't tell time.
Murray McLaughlin.